Have you ever felt a pain in your body that made no sense? A dull ache that lingers even when doctors tell you nothing is wrong, or a sudden tension that seems to appear out of nowhere? Many people dismiss these sensations as random or unimportant, but what if they aren't? What if your body is speaking to you in a language you were never taught to understand? Every discomfort, every recurring pain, every strange heaviness that refuses to go away may not be an accident at all. It may be your inner world reaching out, trying to get your attention. Most of us live in a way that keeps us disconnected from this inner dialogue. We push through headaches, numb our backs with pills, silence our anxiety with distractions, and convince ourselves that suffering is just part of life. But when you stop to really notice, you'll find that pain has a rhythm, a timing, a meaning that always seems to echo the state of your heart and mind. Think about the times when stress seemed unbearable and suddenly a migraine appeared, or the way your shoulders stiffen when you carry responsibilities that feel far heavier than they should, or how your chest feels tight when grief or heartbreak remains unspoken. The body doesn't simply break down, it expresses what words cannot. When emotions are suppressed, they don't vanish. They find other ways to surface, and often the body becomes the canvas where those emotions write their story. Every symptom is like a messenger. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it screams. And until you learn to listen, the message repeats itself, growing louder each time. This is why some pains become chronic. It's not just about biology. It's about a deeper imbalance that begs for recognition. The body does not betray you. It protects you, it warns you, and it guides you toward healing if you allow it to. But here lies the problem. We are not taught to listen. We are taught to cover up, to suppress, to endure. From a young age, strength is equated with silence, with pushing forward even when the body pleads for rest. We call it resilience, but often it is denial. What we call normal may simply be the practice of ignoring our deepest needs. And slowly, without realizing it, we create lives where suffering feels inevitable. The truth is that healing is not about never experiencing discomfort. It's about learning to see beyond the symptom. It's about asking, what is this pain trying to tell me? What am I carrying that no longer belongs with me? What weight have I refused to put down? These questions are the beginning of a different kind of relationship with your body. One where you no longer see it as an enemy but as your closest ally. Your body remembers what your mind forgets. It holds every grief you never cried out, every anger you swallowed, every fear you pretended wasn't there. It carries your story in silence until the silence becomes too heavy. And then it speaks in the only way it can, through the signals you call pain. The invitation is to listen, to pause long enough to feel, to honor those signals not with resistance but with compassion. Because when you give attention to what lies beneath the surface, you give yourself permission to heal not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, and wholly. Healing begins with awareness. It begins the moment you decide that your pain is not meaningless, that your body is not betraying you, that every ache and every tension carries wisdom. If you are willing to listen, to open yourself to what has been waiting all along, you may find that your greatest suffering is also your greatest guide toward freedom. The body speaks in ways that words cannot. It doesn't always cry out in language you can hear with your ears, but it whispers, signals, and sometimes even screams through pain, tension, and unexpected illness. What most people fail to see is that these symptoms are rarely random. They are messages, messengers even, carrying fragments of truth from the parts of yourself you've tried to silence or ignore. A persistent headache, a knot in your stomach, a heaviness in your chest, an ache in your back, these are not accidents. They are expressions of something deeper, echoes of what has gone unfelt and unspoken. Think about it. Your body has been with you every moment of your life. It has witnessed every joy, every heartbreak, every loss, every secret you've buried. It doesn't forget the things your mind tries to erase. And so when an emotion is suppressed, when a wound is left unhealed, your body steps in and says, "If you won't listen to your heart, then you must listen to me." That is why physical symptoms often appear without warning and without explanation. They are not betrayals, they are signals, attempts to restore balance in a world inside you that has been pushed off center. Most people misunderstand this. They see pain only as an enemy, as something to be destroyed or numbed. The headache is silenced with a pill. The stomachache is brushed off as bad food. The back pain is blamed on posture. And sometimes, yes, those causes exist. But often, the body is telling a story that medicine alone cannot touch. It is pointing to imbalance, to weight you are carrying in silence, to truths you haven't dared to face. Every symptom has its own voice. A headache may be the echo of mental overload, the body's way of saying, "Your mind is running faster than I can keep up." Tightness in the chest may carry the weight of grief you never allowed yourself to feel. A tense neck might reveal how inflexible you've become in your thinking, or how trapped you feel in circumstances you can't control. Each ache, each sensation, carries meaning if only you are willing to listen. This doesn't mean you should ignore medical help or pretend that illness is only emotional. It means you should recognize that the body and the mind are not separate. They are woven together so tightly that what one feels, the other reflects. Pain is the language of that connection. It is the body's way of guiding you toward what needs healing inside. So the next time you notice a discomfort that lingers, don't rush to silence it. Pause, ask yourself, what is this trying to show me? What part of myself is asking to be seen? The answer may not come immediately, but the willingness to ask is the first step. Because when you learn to hear the body's voice, you discover that your symptoms are not punishments. They are invitations, gentle or urgent, calling you back to wholeness. Ignoring the signals of the body is one of the most common ways people trap themselves in cycles of pain. When discomfort first appears, it is often subtle, a whisper, almost easy to dismiss. A slight tension in the shoulders, a headache that fades after a quick pill, a restless night of sleep that you shrug off as nothing serious. But when these signals are silenced instead of explored, they don't simply disappear. They grow stronger. The whisper becomes a murmur, the murmur becomes a cry, and eventually the body forces you to stop in ways you can no longer ignore. This is why so much suffering becomes chronic. Not because the body is broken beyond repair, but because the real source of pain has been left untouched. Covering symptoms with medication, distractions, or sheer willpower only masks the problem for a while. It's like turning down the volume of an alarm without putting out the fire that triggered it. The signal is still there, and eventually it will demand to be heard again. What many don't realize is that the habit of ignoring pain is not just about the body, it is a way of life. We learn to suppress our emotions, to hide our grief, to push through exhaustion, to silence the parts of ourselves that don't fit the image we want the world to see. Over time, that suppression becomes second nature. And just as we ignore the ache in our back or the tension in our chest, we ignore the truth inside us. The body becomes the final messenger, the one voice we cannot completely drown out, no matter how hard we try. Living this way slowly steals our vitality. Instead of treating pain as a teacher, we treat it as an intruder. Instead of asking, "What is this discomfort trying to tell me?" we ask, "How quickly can I get rid of it?" And so we rush from one solution to the next, never pausing long enough to understand the root. This avoidance creates a loop. The pain subsides for a moment, then returns, often stronger than before. The more we ignore it, the louder it becomes, until finally we find ourselves carrying a weight we can no longer escape. But what if pain isn't the enemy? What if the discomfort you've been silencing is the body's way of guiding you back to balance? Imagine if instead of resisting, you listened. Instead of numbing, you leaned in. Each symptom, each ache is a messenger waiting to be acknowledged. By turning away, you turn away from yourself. By listening, you open the door to healing that goes far deeper than the physical. So the question becomes, are you willing to break the habit of silencing? Are you willing to pause when your body speaks, to give space to the discomfort instead of rushing to cover it? Because the truth is, Ignoring your pain doesn't make it disappear, it only ties you tighter to the suffering you're trying to escape. Listening, on the other hand, begins to set you free. Every part of the body carries meaning. Nothing that happens within it is without purpose. When pain arises in a specific area, it often mirrors the emotional or psychological struggles you've been carrying silently. The body and the mind are not two separate realities. They are threads woven into the same fabric. So when the mind is burdened with what it cannot resolve, the body takes on the weight, expressing it through discomfort and tension in ways you may not immediately recognize. Think for a moment about the last time your head pounded with a relentless ache. Was it only about dehydration, or was there also pressure building inside your thoughts? Too many worries fighting for space. A headache often arrives when the mind is overloaded, when your inner world is running faster than your body can keep pace with. It is less a random occurrence and more a plea for stillness, for rest, for a pause that you've been denying yourself. Your shoulders, too, often become the silent carriers of invisible burdens. They hold the weight of responsibilities you've taken on, the duties you feel cannot be put down. Sometimes they ache because you've been trying too hard to hold everything together for everyone else. The tension there is not just muscular, it's emotional. It is the heaviness of being the strong one, the one who doesn't allow themselves to crumble even when they long for rest. And then there is the chest, that sacred space where the most delicate emotions are stored. Tightness here rarely comes without meaning. Often it is grief, heartbreak, or a sorrow you've been too afraid to name. The body holds it because the heart was never allowed to release it. You may function, you may smile, you may carry on with daily life, but inside, the chest remembers what you've tried to forget. Even the hands and arms, the very tools through which you interact with the world, carry symbolic weight. They are extensions of your ability to give and to receive. When there is pain or tension in them, it is worth asking, am I giving too much without allowing anything to come back? Am I holding on too tightly to something that no longer belongs with me? The body asks these questions not in words, but in aches, in stiffness, in sudden weakness. The truth is, the body reflects the inner self with astonishing honesty. It does not lie. Where your mind may hide the truth from you, your body will reveal it. The pain is not an accident. It is a map, a guide pointing you toward what needs attention within. The question is whether you are willing to see it that way. Instead of dismissing your symptoms as meaningless, you can begin to ask, what is this telling me about the way I am living, the way I am holding on, the way I am resisting change? When you start to view your body in this way, something shifts. Pain is no longer just pain. It becomes a signal, a message, a bridge between the world you know and the emotions you've ignored. And when you finally begin to honor that message, you create space for healing that goes far deeper than the surface. Release is not weakness. It is freedom. So much of human suffering comes from holding on too tightly, to emotions we never expressed, to burdens that were never truly ours, to identities we've outgrown, to fears that keep us bound. The body carries all of this silently, waiting for the day when you are ready to let go. Pain is often nothing more than the physical echo of what has been trapped for too long. When you resist release, you resist healing. When you allow it, you create space for peace to return. Think about the times in your life when you've clung to something long after it had stopped serving you. Maybe it was a relationship you feared losing, even though it drained your spirit. Maybe it was a responsibility you carried for others, even though it was crushing you. Maybe it was guilt from the past or fear of the future. Each of these weights doesn't vanish simply because you ignore them. They settle into your body, pressing down on your chest, stiffening your shoulders, aching in your back, tightening your hands. Holding on becomes a prison that locks you inside your own pain. Release, on the other hand, is the act of remembering that you are not meant to carry everything. You are not meant to walk through life with every sorrow, every regret, every expectation clinging to you like chains. The body knows this, which is why it often speaks in discomfort until you finally listen. A deep sigh, a tear that finally falls, a breath you didn't know you were holding. These are the beginnings of release. They are signs that something inside you has decided it is time to let go. But here is where many people struggle. Letting go feels unsafe. It feels as though releasing means losing control. We believe that if we stop holding on, everything will fall apart. Yet in reality, release is not about losing. It is about trusting. It is about believing that life can carry you even when you are no longer gripping so tightly. And in that trust, the body finds relief. Muscles soften, tension fades, the heart grows lighter. There is power in simple practices of release, writing down everything you've been carrying and watching the paper burn into ash. Standing outside and exhaling fully, as if the air itself can carry away the weight you no longer need. Closing your eyes and imagining yourself placing your burdens on the ground, even if only for a moment. These small acts remind you that you are not bound forever to what hurts you. Healing does not come from resisting pain, it comes from releasing what feeds it. The body aches because something inside you has been held for too long. And the moment you choose to let it go, even in the smallest way, you step closer to the wholeness you've been searching for. Release is not abandonment, it is alignment. It is saying yes to freedom, yes to balance, yes to the truth that you were never meant to live weighed down. Awareness is the doorway through which all true healing begins. You cannot change what you refuse to see, and you cannot release what you will not acknowledge. The body, with its aches and signals, offers endless opportunities to awaken, but the choice to listen must come from you. Too often, people search outside themselves for solutions, chasing treatments and remedies while overlooking the wisdom already alive within them. Yet healing is not only about medicine or discipline. It begins in the quiet moment when you decide to pay attention, when you allow yourself to ask what your body has been trying to tell you all along. Awareness is not complicated, but it requires courage. It asks you to pause when everything in you wants to rush forward. It asks you to turn inward when distraction feels safer. It asks you to feel the emotions you've been running from, to acknowledge the weight you've been carrying, to name the fears you've kept in the dark. This is not easy work. Most people would rather numb, escape, or explain away their discomfort than sit with it. But avoiding the truth only feeds the cycle of pain. Awareness interrupts it. Consider what happens the moment you pause to notice. You feel the tightness in your chest, and instead of ignoring it, you ask, what sorrow is still living here? You sense the ache in your back, and instead of blaming it on routine, you wonder, whose burdens am I carrying that are not mine to bear? You catch the tension in your jaw, and instead of brushing it aside, you ask, what words have I silenced that needed to be spoken? These questions may not give you instant answers, but they shift something within. They invite honesty, and honesty is the first step toward release. Awareness also transforms the relationship you have with your body. Instead of treating it as a machine that breaks down, you begin to see it as a companion, a teacher, a guide. Every signal it gives you is an invitation to slow down, to adjust, to realign. The more you listen, the more clearly the messages appear. The more you resist, the louder the signals become. Awareness is also about intention. It is not enough to notice pain. You must choose to meet it with compassion rather than judgment. If you see discomfort only as weakness, you will always fight against yourself. But if you see it as communication, you begin to respond differently. You create space for rest instead of pushing harder. You allow emotions to surface instead of forcing them down. You begin to live in harmony with yourself rather than in constant battle. Healing begins here, not in some distant future, not in the moment everything is perfect, but in the present moment when you are willing to open your eyes and ears to what has always been calling for your attention. Awareness is the key that unlocks the cycle of suffering. With it, transformation becomes possible. Without it, you remain bound to the same patterns. The body is always speaking. The question is, are you listening?